Good afternoon to everyone. I'm so glad to see your faces here. A little sad that this is our last presentation, but we have had a wonderful time and it's been some awesome information shared with us. I am pleased to give you some information about our guest speaker today. The Reverend Dr. Robert Richard Allen Turner graduated with honors from the University of Alabama, majoring in political science and a minor in Spanish. While there, he led a movement which resulted in the university recognizing 2 former slaves that had been buried on the college campus. He graduated with honors from the Interdenominational Theological Center's Turner Seminary in Atlanta, Georgia, with a master's in divinity, and went on to receive his Doctor of Ministry from United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. He's a lifetime member of the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Dr. Turner has a passion for evangelism, for serving those in need, and has traveled mission trips to serve in Kenya and in Egypt. Before moving from Mobile, Alabama, Dr. Turner was a regular columnist for the Press Register and AL.com. Intern for the U.S. Senator Richard Shelby, former Congressman Arthur Davis, Alabama Supreme Court Justice Harold C., and Secretary of State Jim Bennett. He's been featured on CBS 60 Minutes and several other national and international publications and news outlets. Reverend Dr. Turner became the pastor of Vernon Chapel on August 25th, 2017. This historic church is the only building that survived the 1921 race massacre on historic Greenwood. His church is one of the only places in Tulsa serving hot meals on a daily basis since March 18th, 2020. And as of February the 3rd, 2021, they have served over 275,000 meals. He serves on several boards, including the National African American Reparations Commission, the 1921 Race Massacre Centennial Commission, Tulsa Mass Graves Oversight Commission, Terrence Crutcher Foundation, Turner Ministry Association, and he's the president of the historic Greenwood Main Street District. The Tulsa World named this community activist, consultant, dean, and clergyman Tulsa of the Year for 2019. He currently resides in Tulsa with his wife, Sherry, and their 2 sons. Would you all please help me extend a warm welcome to the Reverend Dr. Robert Turner.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation. I am just pulling up to church. I want to say that this is a beautiful day, but I'm really appreciative of this series you guys are having and how you have gone about it, inviting various speakers. I looked up the speakers that you have invited. All of them are spectacular. They are some dear friends of mine and very knowledgeable about the Tulsa race massacre. I am just driving from a funeral because even in COVID, people still die.
We can't hear you. Yeah, we can't hear you. Or at least I can't. I don't know if the rest of you can. Okay, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. It was still connected to my Bluetooth. Hey, I was just thanking you all for inviting me and saying while I was in transition, just leaving a funeral, one of my members who passed away. I am so grateful to be the pastor of this historic church. I'm originally from Tuskegee, Alabama, place where Booker T. Washington started college, place where George Washington Carver
brilliantly created 300 inventions out of peanuts. And also the place where our country gave syphilis to Black men. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. government, under the guise of free healthcare, gave syphilis to Black men. And I'm also from the same city that Rosa Parks was born in. In fact, I was born in the same hospital that administered the Tuskegee syphilis study. Wow. And I'm walking inside. And so when I came to Tulsa, when I came to this beautiful place, I already had an appreciation for Black history. I already had an appreciation for knowing how vitally important it is for people to know who they are and to love who they are. And always understanding that there has been a delicate relationship between the church, between the Black community and our government officials and governmental entities. And so when I came to Tulsa, I'd already known about the race massacre, but coming to Vernon, which is what I'm inside of right now, I had a chance to see firsthand the damage. Our church was, our sanctuary that we were building was destroyed. Our basement miraculously survived. And we got no insurance claim paid. Nobody paid us a dime. None of our insurance companies paid us a dime for the church, nor our individual policies as members. And we lost loved ones, we lost businesses, buildings, and we lost friends. Several of my members knew Dick Rowland personally, and they knew several folks who passed. In fact, the funeral home that buried most of the bodies was owned by one of my members, Sam Jackson. You know, SM Jackson. In fact, Jackson Memorial still has his name and picture in their office. And so this is personal for us. But in spite of that, the members of this church came back and rebuilt anyway. And this is the sanctuary that they built. And underneath the sanctuary is the basement of our church that survived the race massacre. It is the only thing on Greenwood Avenue that we still have today that was here during the Black Wall Street era. And that's, to me, nothing but a testament to God. And when we came back and rebuilt, we put the names of our members who contributed on our stained glass windows. And those stained glass windows were in much need of repair. And they have just recently been restored. They're being restored right now, and they should be back in during the centennial celebration. So we're going to have some nice events for the commemoration, because in honesty, I don't think that many other places have much to celebrate, because unfortunately, the massacre destroyed everything. And what the massacre did not destroy, urban renewal came and destroyed later on. And so this is real living history. I know that we want to carve out time for questions and answers, but I want to kind of give you a background of that. And so, being the pastor of this historic church, I felt the conviction from God to speak up about the race massacre. When I first came to Tulsa, I knew about the massacre, but I didn't really see any movement from the faith community addressing justice or the lack thereof. And so God moved me to go out to City Hall every Wednesday. I'll be out there today to speak and to call this community that some say want racial healing. Well, if you want that, and I want that too, we need to be honest about our suffering. We need to be honest about what we have done to other people. And that's something that America doesn't do quite well at, especially as it relates to suffering of her Black citizens. And so I go out to City Hall every Wednesday, and I call the nation to repent, to recognize what they've done, and to repent of it, and to repair. As was mentioned in the introduction, I sit on the National African American Reparations Commission. We met last night, and we find ways and we think through ways to help bring this country closer to reparatory justice. We just had a congressional hearing last week about HR 40, which is a bill authored by Sheila Jackson Lee, I also got an attorney locally here to pursue damages for us, attorney Demario Solomon Simmons. And so we're involved in that as well. One of the first plaintiffs in that lawsuit. And also mentioned to the mayor about the need of excavating the bodies from the mass graves. At my first public speaking appearance in Tulsa was at Morning Star Missionary Baptist Church when Mayor Bynum came to do a town hall meeting. And it was there that I mentioned about the mass graves. And first time on record, the mayor ever went on record as saying he would support that. And he did in response to my question. And so I sit on that mass grave excavation committee. And to me, that has not been going as expeditiously as I would like it to be. And right now we're trying to find a place to intern the bodies because unfortunately, Tulsa doesn't have any Black-owned cemeteries, and that's just a sad fact. And so we've offered our land here, and there are other places that the group is thinking about. So we'll make a decision on that soon. But the most important thing is to allow those bodies to be laid at rest, at peace, and to bring some sort of healing to the families. This is hard work. This is hard work, not just hard work. This is HEART, hard work. And if your heart is not in it, you won't last. People have assaulted me. People have said some terrible things about me. I know I'm not from here, so I get that a lot. I get that a whole lot. He's not from here. I know I'm young. I get that a lot. And being a Nuke doesn't help at all when most people in this city are of other Greek letter organizations. But I still press on because it's not about me. It's not about nothing I get personally out of this. The church I pastor doesn't give me a bonus for every protest I lead. I don't get any extra dividend stock options for protests that I have. This is hard work. This is because I believe in it, because God has called me to it. I've had some very dangerous moments with people who don't agree with me. So one of those especially is listed on my YouTube channel. I was assaulted out at City Hall. Just recently, somebody sent me a very derogatory message on social media. But the work to me doesn't stop. I can't stop because this is too important. This is my life's work, bringing about a reparatory justice and help bringing America closer to the healing she needs from her original sin of racism. I've been asked to now go and speak to various groups across the country and even corporations and foundations about how they can become more inclusive. But a part of being inclusive to me is knowing your history and knowing what this country has done to her citizens, right? And to tell the true story. We have this notion now of people using the phrase cancel culture and saying, well, this is all this cancel culture stuff. Well, what they fail to realize is that Black people's culture has been canceled since we've been in this country. We've had our names changed, our religions eliminated, we've had our cultures misappropriated and misallocated. We have culture vultures, people who've taken our culture and monetized it, and we still are struggling from it. So I don't. Part of me, if I don't have much sympathy for those who cry cancel culture now, when that's what happened to our culture and ancestors pretty much since we've been in this country. We have seen the dangers of mob violence. We've seen it in Tulsa, 1921. We've seen it across the country in the Red Summer of 1919, where from 1919 to 1925, this nation had over 52 race massacres. 52. Every place where African Americans came 2-3 generations out of slavery and built up their own Black enterprise zones. Like what we did here in Tulsa. A lot of white folks couldn't take it. They went crazy because they were raised by people who had slaves or overseers or folks who participated in the system of slavery. Because when I do presentations, I hear a lot of times folks saying, well, Dr. Turner, my parents didn't own slaves. My parents were poor. My parents couldn't afford to buy slaves. But slavery is not just about participation. Slavery is about a system that you operate and live in. And if you don't speak against that system, you are a participant in the institution of slavery. Owning slaves is one form of participation, but silence and acquiescence and complicity is another form of participation. So even if your grandparents were not rich enough to own slaves, were they an abolitionist? Did they speak up against it? And if that answer is no, I'm sorry to tell you, your great-grandparents participated in the institution of slavery. And furthermore, today in 2021, we have vestiges of slavery, such as white supremacy, which is also dangerous. White supremacy is what led to the destruction of Black Wall Street during the 1921 race massacre. Thankfully, the resilience of Black people and the faith of Black people led to its rebuilding and Greenwood rising again. But the initial destruction was in large part because white people felt that this land was too good for Black people to have, and they wanted us to get off of it. And they used any means they could. And they didn't just do it here in Tulsa. They did it in East St. Louis. They did it in Wilmington. They did it in Auburn. They did it in Washington, D.C. They did it in Rosewood, Florida. They did it in Elaine, Arkansas. Any place where Black people thrive, they tried to destroy it. And once we rebuilt it back, they come in the 60s and early 70s and build the interstate highway to our main Black enterprise zones. That is why, if you want to know why in most metropolitan cities, you don't have, like you have a Mexico town or a German town or a Mexico City or whatnot, and you don't have a Black town or African town, it's because wherever the interstate highway is in that city, that's where the Black town used to be. And they put the interstate highway through the heart of those districts to make sure we could never return. So I know I'm speaking a lot, but it's important for you all to know the struggle here in Tulsa is not just a local struggle, it is a national struggle, and it really is an international struggle. There was just recently a massacre this week in Ethiopia at a church. You know, people trying to go and hide inside the church, and folks were killed. Black Africans were killed. Black Ethiopians were killed. So this thing we call racism, judging people or having a hierarchy of system based on just the color of your skin, is dangerous, and it is sinful. It is wickedness. It is evil, and we must all, if you subscribe to religion or not, if you are a human being, we must all fight to eradicate it and all of her vestiges from our society. Thank you all so much. And I'll take any questions you have.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Turner, for that. We appreciate the background there, and just you explaining how you got involved in this work and your continued efforts in this work. I mean, there's no period here, I mean, it's ongoing. So right now, do we have any questions for Dr. Turner? Any students or faculty who are on here have any questions?
Yes, Dr. Williams, I have a question for you, Dr. Turner.
Okay.
My name is Tanya Crutcher, and I'm representing the African American Student Association. My question is regarding you. You are on the board of the National African American Reparations Commission, and our mayor, G.T. Bynum, has expressed his disapproval or disagreement with cash reparations for the Black community and how all of that will affect us in the future. However, the city of Evanston, Illinois, has been the only city so far that has created a system of reparations in the form of monies for home ownership, for African Americans. Has the commission looked at the template of what the city of Evanston is using, and maybe creating something for Tulsa to use in regards to cash reparations?
Great question. I know this Evanston situation quite well. I was just on a panel with the city councilor who's done a fantastic job, Mr. Robin, council lady, who's done a wonderful job in leading that effort. And what the city of Evanston did, which is really what Tulsa and Oklahoma should have done had they the foresight. Just as we are now witnessing the boom of dispensaries across Oklahoma, what the city of Evanston did, they saw that same boom coming in Illinois and in the city of Evanston. And what the city councilors did, they had the data that showed how many young African Americans were currently incarcerated due to marijuana crimes, right? Which has now become legal pretty much in most cities in America. And what they said was, we can find a way to not, tax everybody, but to tax this new industry that has for the longest impacted the Black community and have that tax go to fund reparations. And so now they're looking at, in the first year alone, like $25 million that they have because people buying weed, and these dispensaries are popping up everywhere. And so they've attached that to be the income base for reparations, or the reparations fund in Evanston. The same thing could have been done in Oklahoma. In fact, Oklahoma has, what I'm told, more dispensaries per capita than any other state in America, right? So if we wanted to, we could have taxed, and we could still do it, tax dispensaries to set up the fund for reparations. So yeah, the commission, we're talking about that. We're talking about a lot of things that relate to African Americans and how we have been impacted in this country. The issue, Sister Crutcher, is oftentimes there is just no will. We politicians have shown they are willing to do whatever they want to do. They were willing to, when George Bush was in office, pass $1 trillion a bill to fund businesses they felt were too big to fail. Right at the height of a recession, they passed $1 trillion bill to give money to folks who had just put us in the recession. Just recently, during COVID-19, they passed several $1 trillion to go to COVID relief, which I support, right? I think the bill should be even bigger. But this country has shown us we are willing to do whatever we need to do when we want to do it. Unfortunately, as far as justice for Black people, this country has shown that, and this city has shown, that they don't hold our lives as equally as important as they do everybody else's. I mean, for instance, and I thank God for economic development, but we give sweetheart deals to businesses to come to Tulsa, right? We give sweetheart deals to individuals to come to Tulsa. But what about the people who live in Tulsa and who have suffered the brunt of white supremacy that this city has never atoned or paid for? And so I think that it's not so much to me a question of how, it's a question of will, and are people willing to actually treat African Americans as they treat everybody else? And we're not asking for anything extra. We're just asking for the same treatment you gave to Japanese Americans. They got reparations after they were placed in internment camps. We want that same type of treatment. We want the same type of treatment you give to economic development, of trying to attract business to come to our community. You need to try to do the same thing to African Americans. And unfortunately, we are not giving that. We're not giving that treatment.
Did that answer your question a little bit, Tanya?
Yes, Dr. Turner, that answered my question. When I saw the segment on the news, I was astounded because that seems so simple, a resolution. Now, on a long-term basis, I'm not sure, how that all is going to work out, but if it's working now, taking a small amount, and they're just offering $25,000,
Mm-hmm.
but for some families, that can be life-changing when it comes to home ownership. $25,000 could really set them in a position of being able to pass on legacy to the next generation, which was denied to the survivors of the massacre who lost their businesses and homes and were not able to rebuild. For example, my children are descendants of a 1921 survivor, Rebecca Brown Crutcher. Her family had a business on historic Greenwood. That business was not rebuilt, and they did not receive reparations. So there is a wealth gap that could be resolved just by using the example of what's happening in Evanston. So thank you for that answer, Dr. Turner.
Are you related to the Crutcher family, Reverend George Crutcher?
That is correct. He is my father.
Okay, yeah, wonderful family, wonderful. I'm sorry about the loss of Queen Leanna Crutcher. Yes, but you're absolutely right. And the crazy part about it is, the situation in Evanston, they don't have nearly the racial animus history that Tulsa has, right? They're not the site of the worst race massacre in American history, but yet they still had elected officials with the political will to fight for repair to justice. And so I think even more so should be done in Tulsa, who has the presence of the worst massacre in American history, and has yet to this day to offer any repair to the families. It is a sick embarrassment, and quite frankly, it will be a gross embarrassment come the centennial if this city still is yet to offer any atonement or repair. Miss me with plaques. I mean, plaques are good for telling the story, but you can't eat a plaque. You can't wear a plaque. We need justice. My grandmother, God rest her soul, when I would speak some places and folks gave me a plaque, she's like, that's good. That's good, baby, but what they give you to eat with? And so I always kind of take that in mind. A plaque is wonderful, but people need to eat. And people need justice, like your family. And it's sad that to this day, our city has not shown that they're willing to do that.
Any other pressing questions for Dr. Turner?
Dr. Turner, did I understand correctly that you're on a committee that relates to the basically the digging up of the graves and the disinterment?
Yes, sir.
Is there any? I mean, I think you said that you were bothered by the lack of speed with which it's moving, and that certainly seems seems appropriate to me. Is there any update? Is there anything you can tell us that we might not have heard from the news or from the committee or anything?
Yes. Basically, we're still waiting to we haven't even surveyed half of the site, right? We haven't even done that yet. We're still waiting on the owner of Rolling Oaks, otherwise known as the Old Booker T Cemetery. We've had more excuses from him than a little bit. I told the city, the mayor's office especially, a long time ago, we should have just gotten the legal mandate to do it. But in order to do that, you have to list the perpetrator. And they don't want to list the perpetrator, I think, because perpetrator are some of the folks who are in the city, and because we never had an investigation, we don't know actual names of individuals, but we do know names of institutions that still exist. So yeah, we are still at a standstill with the old Rolling Oaks, and we currently right now trying to find a place to intern the bodies. There are a few options that the committee we're looking at, but nothing has been set in stone as of yet.
Is it
So
likely
my
that-
question has to do with the lack of people in the city of Tulsa, not just our politicians, but citizens in the city who say, well, I shouldn't have to help pay reparations. I wasn't a part of that. I didn't cause that. So I moved back to Tulsa when I was a junior in high school. Never lived here before. My mom is from here. So, I moved here in high school. Didn't learn about Tulsa race massacre in high school. took my first African-American history class as a freshman at TU, and that's what I learned about it. Shocking that I knew nothing about it my whole life. So my thought is, do we think that people don't want to see reparations because they didn't learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre, so they have no knowledge and understanding of the history, so it's not a big deal to them, so why should we have to do this for citizens who were affected by it? Is it a lack of knowledge and understanding? Is there a correlation between that, a lack of knowledge and of the history behind it, as to why so many politicians aren't going to be on board with making sure reparations happen?
I think it's both, and I think that people, and this makes this fact that I'm about to mention makes the occurrence, what's happening right now with this current generation, even more damning than the previous. Because in the previous generation, a lot of them could say that, a lot of them could have plausible deniability. They could say, well, we just didn't know, right? I had no clue. But guess what? This generation of Tulsans, they know. They, to whom much is given, much is required. And once you know better, you ought to do better. But now we have a generation of Tulsans now that, I don't know the statistics because nobody's done a survey, but I would, and I'm not a betting man, but I would wager and say at least half of Tulsans now know about the race massacre. I think that's about fair. But even with half knowing, less than half still support reparations. So that's an even more damning indictment on the current generation, because the previous one could at least say, well, we didn't know. They hid it from us. It was never in our history books. That's a shame. I wish I had known, right? This generation, they know full well. And they still don't care. They still don't want to do right. And that to me shows that a lot of people still suffer from racism. I mean, I can't put it any other way. And why do I say that? Why? Because I wasn't here. Why should you say that's racist? Me, I want to pay for something that I didn't participate in, that I'm not a part of, that I won't get any benefit from. Okay. A lot of those same people could possibly send their children to private schools. And guess what? They still pay taxes, and those tax dollars go to fund what? Public schools. They don't complain about, hey, why are my tax dollars going to pay for something I never participated in? Or guess what? They may live in a certain side of town and they never drive on streets on another side of town. But guess what? Their tax dollars is going to fix up streets on the side of town they don't live in. They don't complain and say, hey, I don't want my tax dollars going to that. I'll give you another example, because they may say, well, I didn't do it. Why should I have to pay for it? Those same tax dollars, we have Sister Crutcher on this call. The Crutcher family, and God bless them, wonderful family. They had to pay taxes to a police department that killed their relative, right? What if they say, well, I'm tired of paying taxes to a police department that's killing innocent, unarmed Black people, like my relative? Nah. Betty Shelby was put on administrative leave. She was still paid. In fact, school teachers that bother the children, they still get paid when they're on administrative leave. Nobody says go to the school with me and say, hey, you know what? My tax dollars shouldn't go to pay for that because, I don't go to school there. First of all, my child doesn't, and I didn't commit that assault on a child. So why am I paying her salary? No, the only time people have a problem paying for something is when it comes to Black people. Period, point blank. You don't complain about money going to build roads, to go to schools, support police. And if anybody had the right to complain about their tax dollars, it's the Black folks who are getting killed by police officers. But we don't. Only when it comes to us getting what we deserve as justice, you folks want to say, well, I wasn't here. Why should I have to pay? And that to me is a sign of people who buy into racist ideology, or white supremacist ideology, which says that white culture and white suffering is more important than anybody else's suffering. So the fact that they have to suffer and pay taxes that may benefit somebody who looks like me, they don't want to pay it. They don't want to do it because it will benefit somebody who looks like me. And that's a white supremacist notion that breeds racism. Because in white supremacist notions, black suffering does not matter half as much as white suffering. And if white suffering occurs in the slightest bit, then it overrules any other suffering. And whatever needs to be done to keep white suffering from happening, we must do it by all costs, by any means necessary.
Dr. Turner, do you consider that forcing the insurance companies who never paid out a cent, is that I don't know why, but that seems like easier to sell, because it's something that there are contracts that said you're supposed to pay this and they just didn't do it. It seems like that would be, I don't know, maybe a easier first step than some of the others. I don't, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. Since I've been here, I've been trying to identify who our insurance company was. Of course, all that information was destroyed, and no insurance company is coming up volunteering and saying, "Hey, I was one who insured all these businesses on Greenwood." Nobody's trying to do that. But the information has to be out there. There had to be some type of insurance agency for the state of Oklahoma. There had to be zone areas that, kind of like our cable is zoned to certain geographic areas. Insurance companies have the same type of mapping. But to this day, nobody has been able to identify, and definitely no insurance company has come forward saying that we were the ones who insured those properties. But great point, great question, because it is your basic breach of contract case, right? We paid our premium, but we didn't get our claim.
Yeah, life insurance. I mean, I guess you dig up the bodies and you prove who the people are, then somebody's got to pay a life insurance policy.
That's right. But they put the bodies in mass graves and then put tombstones on them. So we're gonna rely upon a DNA process that's gonna take several months to even just identify nearest of kin, so we can try to find a match. This is a multi-year process. Unfortunately, the city has taken so long to even start that my biggest frustration is, after the centennial, how much interest will still be in this, and if I might add, reparations is not just about a physical check. To me, it's also about criminal charges. The fact that we had the worst race massacre in American history occur in our city, and not one person was ever charged with the crime, shows you a lot about our justice system and how they value Black lives. I mean, think about this. The first time airplanes were used to drop bombs on American soil happened right here in Tulsa. The last two times we went to war. The last time, 9/11, we bombed Afghanistan. We're still over there today. We killed Saddam Hussein and his sons. The time before that, Pearl Harbor, 1942, December 1942, we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan and Hiroshima. To this day, you cannot live in Chernobyl because it's radioactive. And the Japanese government, to this very moment, cannot have a standing military, because the last time they did, they used it to drop bombs on American soil. But for the very first time airplanes were used to drop bombs on American soil, the perpetrators were white and the victims were Black. And none of the perpetrators were ever charged with the crime. And to this day, now I get it. Some people may say that they didn't know about it, right? I have a hard time believing that, because we have people who come forward saying they found pictures in the police department about the race massacre. And I asked the mayor about that, and he said those pictures that the chief mentioned, those pictures are missing. Now nobody can find them. How is it that the chief investigative fact-finding body in the city, the police department, How do you just lose evidence? And never mind from the worst crime in the city's history. How do you just lose evidence? The district attorney we've never had a district attorney in Tulsa to investigate the worst crime in Tulsa. Never, not even a file. The attorney general, how can you not investigate the worst crime in your state's history? So I'm sorry, miss me, DA, for going after folk who write bad checks. Miss me for going after petty criminals when every year you ignore the race mask of 1921, you are letting murderers get away scot-free. And that's a shame. And so it goes into that narrative, of Black people suffering and there being no justice. The Justice Department has yet to work for us. And we've seen it with Terrence Crutcher. We've seen it with Joshua Barre. We've seen it with Eric Harris. We've seen it with so many who've been killed by the city. And no justice. And for the worst crime in this city's history, now 2021, everyone agrees what happened in Tulsa and Greenwood was terrible. But nobody has yet to do a criminal investigation. And we pay taxes, right? The descendants of these folk pay taxes to a legal system that still does not honor their loved ones. And so one of my biggest critiques of the excavation committee, and I say it at every meeting just about, stop treating this merely as a historical investigation. This should be a criminal excavation. Where is the DA's forensic team? You've all watched CSI. We've had none of that at our excavation sites. None of that. So this is not being treated as the worst crime in this city's history. It's just not. And people may not like me for saying it, but the truth is what it is. But they want us to be just happy that we have an excavation going on, and I'm thrilled about that. But to show somebody a dead corpse and not try to show them who did it, to me, it's giving them half the story. I don't want to just show these families a dead corpse. I want to show them we are trying as much as we can to find who did this. I want to show somebody a dead daughter, a dead granddaughter. I want to show them who did it too. I didn't mean to go on with it much, but
I thought the mayor had said something, made a statement, maybe a statement with no action behind it, but I thought he made a statement about the criminal aspects of this that had never been dealt with.
he did. He at the beginning he did say he would treat this as a criminal investigation. You're absolutely right. He has yet to do that.
But then nothing's happened.
No, he has yet to. I'm speaking for one committee member. Have yet to see the chief of police. Have yet to see the district attorney at any of our meetings, and have yet to see a criminal investigation report at any of our meetings. The only interaction we've had with the DA was getting permission through him and the judge to exhume the bodies. That's it. And I asked at that meeting, are we going to invite them to be a part of this excavation process to gather evidence that can be used? And then the reply to me was, well, everybody's probably dead who did this anyway. And I'm like, I'm sorry, the city of Tulsa is not dead. And their fire department watched Greenwood burn. The sheriff's department is not dead. And they deputize members of the white mob. So whereas individuals maybe, and that's still something that we can't say because guess what? We've not done an investigation. But we do know the institutions that were in existence then are still here today.
Dr. Turner, you've certainly touched on some riveting points here. I would just also like to say that last week we had Dr. Carlos Cahill from OU Norman present to us, and he studies incidents of racial violence, and he shared with us that, to his knowledge, that the Tulsa Race Massacre is the most photographed event of, racial violence. He was able to, find over 500 pictures. Now, his book won't be able to include all 500. He'll have about 100 or so, but he was just amazed at how many images that he was able to find of the massacre. But I want to fast forward a little bit to something that you touched on that I've been thinking about, and it is, so what happens after the commemoration? What happens? I mean, I've been wondering about that myself. What do you think that looks like? I mean, what do you think that those of us who've been invested in this work should be prepared for, can expect? I'm just curious from your perspective.
I think what's going to happen after 9/11, I mean, not 9/11, it feels like 9/11 for us, but what's going to happen after the 100th centennial commemoration is unfortunately they're going to turn the largest crime scene in our city and state into a tourist site, and that's it. And that's going to be sickening. I mean, I do want people to come and learn the story, but I don't want them to just be left with a story. I want them to become members of a movement to fight for justice. I think there are going to be a lot of book deals, a lot of people who are going to move on probably to the next thing. And meanwhile, Vernon's still going to be right here. Meanwhile, the body's still going to be in mass graves. Meanwhile, certain sites will still not be excavated or surveyed. I think for a lot, they're going to go to business as usual. I for one, am not built like that. I started off protesting by myself at City Hall. Nobody asked me to do it. I had more people ask me not to do it than to do it. Nobody asked me to do it, matter of fact. But I just, that's a question I think about on a regular basis. Because you're going to also see who's really for the people, and who's just doing it because it's in vogue. You're going to see who's really doing it because it's just the right thing to do. So yeah, I'm not optimistic about the aftermath if we don't get as much as we need to beforehand. I'm gonna fight like heaven to get it beforehand. And I appreciate it's gonna be a lot of documentaries done that you'll probably see me in, and I hope that brings a lot of awareness and brings more people to the fight. But I'm really concerned about January the 3rd. January the 2nd, the day after. Because this should not just become merely a tourist site. This is living, breathing history. We hope people come to it, but we hope that they become comrades in the struggle as they come to them, after they come to them.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts or questions or comments for Dr. Turner?
Dr. Turner, I have one last question. This is in regards to the younger generation from high school to college, the young adults. What would you say would be the call to action for that generation?
Oh, we desperately need them. And the thing about the younger generation, they shouldn't wait until they finish their degree to be an activist. I cut my teeth in activism in high school. In high school, I participated in my first in high school, and I've been marching ever since. And I'm being from Alabama, you just, that's what you see. And so there, and in college, as you mentioned in my intro, in my bio, was marching in college against injustice and against racism. We need young people to start early, not be afraid to fail, not be afraid to get in disagreements with your professors. I know you have a lot of professors on the call now, but I was one of those, especially in some of my classes. I read more than the assigned text, so I read a lot of books. And especially going to the University of Alabama, I had a lot of teachers who were in disagreement with a lot of my views. But you still go and you still challenge. And so I just encourage them to realize being an activist is not something you just major in college. It's not a minor. It's your life. And to me, it's not like something that's a hobby. It's not something you do for clicks. It's not something you do for Instagram selfies. It's something you do to truly make a difference. And not to be distracted or bought out by people who want to silence your voice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that.
Pastor Turner, I just want to say that, I appreciate your passion and activism. You do remind me of one of the race massacre survivors. I don't remember his name, but I know he wore a pacemaker and attended Mount Zion. And we asked a question of him as he was aging and said, what is your message to those what's your formula for how you keep going? And his response was, it takes a lot of bravery to get old. And when I think of your activism, I think it takes a lot of bravery to do what you do. You don't appear to be concerned. I'm sure you are, but you don't project a concern about what other people think. You just want to do the right thing. And I think that's the bravery that this particular survivor spoke of, and you are carrying that spirit. So I just thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Dickens. I really appreciate that.
Anyone else? Okay, there is one thing in the chat that I do want to read. Dr. Turner, I appreciate you for all that you do for us in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and thank you for shedding light on this subject. That was from a student in the chat, so you would have that. As we said when we opened this is our last session for 2021. We've had a great series. I think the people who've been on here with us this whole, February, now March, have just really been filled and enriched with all of this stuff. So thank you so much. And Dr. Turner, we know that you are super busy, so we appreciate you carving out just a little bit of your time to share with us this afternoon. And I can't let this call end without thanking Student Life for supporting this event. Also, Tanya Crutcher, she's been with me from the very beginning, introducing everybody. So thank you, Tanya. Dr. Adwasi is on here, who's managed the chat some, Dr. Dickens, Sylvia, just everybody, students, faculty, everybody who has supported this series. And of course, we'll be back in 22 with some other things, and we have just, a lot of stuff going on. So we just appreciate everybody's support. Remember that there is still a pandemic going on, despite what some people think. So be safe out there, and just thank you so much for supporting us. All
and
right.
I'm about to leave my social media stuff in the chat box too.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for organizing it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. This has been fun. This has been a wonderful series.